Hi, my name is Christopher McClellan, and today I'll be presenting my recent article from the International Journal of AI in Education titled Domain General Tutor Authoring with Apprentice Learner Models. This is work conducted in collaboration with Professor Ken Kadinger. In our paper, we explore an AI technology that supports teachers and other domain experts in efficiently authoring intelligent tutors. Using our approach, a teacher can author a tutor by teaching an AI agent the way they would a human student, through examples and feedback. And from these interactions, the AI system learns a tutor model that can be deployed to provide personalized instruction and scale. To support this approach, we developed the Apprentice Learner architecture, which learns cognitive models for tutors from worked examples and feedback. I don't have time to go into the details of our model during this short talk. However, I will briefly discuss our model's learning mechanisms. The system has 4 learning mechanisms it uses to learn from examples and feedback. These are how learning, where learning, when learning, and which learning. The architecture is configurable, so the researchers can use different machine learning approaches for each mechanism depending on their goal. For this work, we use explanation-based learning for how learning, relational learning for where learning, classification learning for when learning, and utility learning for which learning. If you're interested in learning more about the specifics of our model, please see the full paper for details. To show you how an apprentice model works, let's walk through how this agent might be used to author an algebra equation solving tutor. To start, I built the tutor interface shown here using the Cognitive Tutor Authoring Tools, or CTAT for short, which makes it possible to create an interface using drag and drop functionality, kind of like making a PowerPoint slide. Once I have an interface, here's what it looks like for a teacher to interactively train an apprentice agent to solve problems in it. The teacher starts by using the interactive instruction mode. The system doesn't have any knowledge of equation solving initially, so it requests demonstrations from the teacher. These demonstrations consist of things like highlighting relevant information, executing the next step in the tutor, and labeling the steps with a human-readable skill, which enables later interpretability of model outputs. After a few problems, the system has started to learn the skills for the task and begins to automatically take the steps in the tutor, only requiring the teacher to provide correctness feedback on the agent's behavior. To evaluate apprentice agents as a tool for tutor authoring, we connected Apprentice to the Cognitive Tutor Authoring Tools, authored problems using both Apprentice and example tracing, another authoring by demonstration approach, which is the current state of the art within CTAT. Lastly, we used a keystroke level model to estimate how long it would take a trained developer to author the problems using each approach. In our prior work, we found that authoring the equation solving tutor took less than half the time with Apprentice as it did with example tracing. The learned apprentice model was also more general than the example tracing one. Specifically, the example tracing model only worked for the 20 problems we authored for this tutor, but the apprentice model could also work on novel problems that we had never authored. Despite this success, our initial analysis did not account for example tracing's mass production feature, which lets users author behavior graph templates and then instantiate them to quickly create sets of problems within the tutor. Based on this prior work, our paper presents 2 studies. For our first study, we aim to generalize the algebra tutor authoring results to a novel experimental design tutor. As part of this study, we tried to factor mass production into our analysis so that apprentice agents and example tracing could be compared more fairly. To do this, we estimated that mass production would take 0 time, which is a gross underestimate, but it provides a simple way to include mass production in our analysis. We started by creating an experimental design tutor. The goal of this tutor is to teach students to design experiments that control a single variable. Shown on the right is the behavior graph that we authored for one problem within this tutor using example tracing. Each of the paths in the diagram corresponds to a unique but correct answer to the problem. In contrast, Apprentice is authored interactively by providing 2 kinds of inputs, demonstrations shown on the left and correctness feedback shown on the right. Applying our keystroke level model to estimate the time it would take to author this tutor, we found that Apprentice would take approximately 1/3 of the time example tracing requires, even when we estimated that mass producing problems is instantaneous. The main reason example tracing takes so long is because we have to author 3 behavior graph templates, one for each column being manipulated within the experimental design tutor, and each template requires 56 demonstrations to author. In contrast, we authored single solution paths for the apprentice agent for each problem. It then learned a more general model from these demonstrations. It's worth noting that during authoring, we found it challenging to ensure the coverage and accuracy of our apprentice models. Ultimately, we had to explicitly demonstrate all of the possible ways different kinds of problems could be solved during teaching so that the model was familiar with these alternatives. After this initial success, we conducted a second study to explore the generality of our approach. We tried to replicate our authoring efficiency analysis on the 7 tutoring systems shown here. We picked these tutors because they have existing human data and because they span a variety of domains and knowledge types. Rather than manually authoring these tutors and evaluating the efficiency by hand, I developed a test harness that simulates a person training the models. This test harness trained each model using a sequence of problems that was identical to the one an actual human student had received during a classroom study with the tutor. Here is a short clip of the different agents learning across each of these environments. I'd like to highlight that the same apprentice model is being used in each case, and each model has the same set of prior knowledge built into it. For this study, we evaluated 2 different apprentice models, the decision tree and trestle models. We first looked at model performance to try to determine if the models had acquired complete and correct models by the end of training. To do this, we looked at the performance of the models across all problems, as shown in the solid bars in the figure on the right. We also used a mixed effects regression, similar to the additive factors model, to estimate the asymptotic performance of the models at the end of training, as shown in the shaded bars. What we found was that the apprentice model seems to reach 100% asymptotic performance by the end of training in 4 of the domains. However, it looks like more practice is needed for the remaining 3 domains, shown in the red circles on the right. Another interesting finding is that the performance of our models is roughly comparable to the humans who were learning in the same sequences. The human performance is shown here in the red bars. Next, we looked at authoring time using the keystroke level model we employed before. What we found is that when mass production takes 0 time, example tracing outperforms Apprentice on 6 out of the 7 domains. However, we suspect that if we had used more reasonable estimates for the mass production time, then the performance between these 2 approaches would be quite similar. For one domain, stoichiometry, the Apprentice model outperformed example tracing, even with instantaneous mass production. When we looked more closely at the experimental design and stoichiometry tutors, which are the domains where Apprentice outperformed example tracing, we found that these tutors require multiple behavior graph templates with lots of paths and links that need to be authored for each. Based on these results, it's likely that Apprentice is particularly advantaged over example tracing for similar kinds of tutors that have similar behavior graph structure. In conclusion, our paper makes 2 high-level claims. First, we claim that the Apprentice model can support efficient tutor authoring. To support this claim, we showed that Apprentice is more efficient for authoring tutors with multiple complex behavior graph structures, such as the experimental design and stoichiometry tutors. Our model was estimated to be less efficient than example tracing on 6 of the domains that we evaluated, but we suspect that these 2 approaches would have similar authoring times if we had used a more reasonable estimate of the time it takes to use example tracing's mass production feature. Our second claim is that Apprentice models are domain general. To support this claim, we showed that Apprentice models can learn at a human level across 7 different tutors spanning a broad range of domains such as math, language, and engineering. In conclusion, we believe that these are some very exciting results. Thank you.